Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening for a virtual information session for Bay Path University's Master of Science in Genetic Counseling program. My name is Carrie Ann Viennes, and I'll be helping to facilitate tonight's session. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that this session is being recorded. We'll be sharing the recording afterwards, so you can refer back to it or share it with others who might be interested. During this evening's session, you'll get a comprehensive overview of the genetic counseling program, including details on the curriculum, admissions requirements, and the exciting diverse career paths available in this growing field. We're also thrilled to be joined by our program director, Megan Trinkle-Knotts, who will share insights in what makes Bay Path's program unique. We'll wrap up with a live Q&A session, so please feel free to submit your questions at any time in the chat feature. We'll be sure to address as many as we can at the end. Whether you're just starting to explore the field or preparing to apply, we're so glad you're here, and we hope the session helps to guide your next steps. So we can get started. So this is Bay Path at a glance for those of you just learning about us. We were established in 1897, and we are a private, not-for-profit institution with campuses in Longmeadow, East Longmeadow, Massachusetts, and online. We have a student body of over 5,000 students and more than 17,000 alumni worldwide. And Bay Path is fully accredited by the New England Commission of Higher Education, and the Genetic Counseling Program is accredited by the Accreditation Council for Genetic Counseling. So why choose Bay Path? We know that you have a bunch of options. First, we are flexible and accessible. Whether you're balancing work, family, or other responsibilities, our programs are designed to meet you where you are with online, hybrid, and on-campus options that fit your schedule. Second, you'll find a truly supportive faculty and staff. From admissions to academic advising, you're never just a number. We're here to guide you every step of the way, cheering you on and helping you succeed. Third, Bay Path is home to an engaging and diverse community. You'll learn alongside students from all walks of life, gaining perspectives that broaden your thinking and enrich your experience. Fourth, we believe in an innovative approach to learning. Our curriculum goes beyond traditional, using real-world projects, technology, and active learning strategies that keep you engaged and challenged. And finally, what you'll learn here is immediately applicable. Whether you're entering the workforce or advancing in your career, our programs are built to give you skills to use from day one. At Bay Path, you're not just preparing for a job, you're preparing for a purpose. And so, without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to the program director, Megan Trinkle-Knotts. Megan?
Hi, everyone. I wanted to just share a little bit about my own journey that brought me here to being the program director at Bay Path. When I graduated from my genetic counseling training program nearly 20 years ago, I started off my career as a clinical genetic counselor, practicing primarily in prenatal and a pediatric setting. I did that for about 10 years. And then I actually got tapped to start a new genetic counseling training program. So I helped found the program at Indiana State University. And simultaneously, they were looking to open a brand new cancer clinic because there weren't any cancer services within about 100 miles. So I started a new clinic and a new program. That was the first program to have any predominantly online components. So the first year of that program was face-to-face, and the second year of that program was fully online. And then the next year, Bay Path opened. I was not part of Bay Path, but Bay Path was the first fully online program that started the same year as Boise State, which you may have heard of. It's another one of the first online programs. So I actually joined Bay Path as the assistant director and fieldwork coordinator in 2021. And since then, about 2024, I started my own private practice, MK Genetics. So I actually see patients remotely, just a few patients a week to try and keep up my clinical skills. And so students will work with me and see patients with me as part of that clinic. And then most recently, just this past summer, I was promoted to the director position because our current director retired. And so now I am the director of the program here at BayPath. And so, as it says, the journey continues. We'll see what ends up coming next. But that's just a little bit about getting me from my graduate program to where I am today. And then a few other things, just a little bit about me. I threw some pictures up here. I currently live and am from Indiana. So there's a few pictures of obviously Indiana and then Indianapolis in the top corner. That is my family in the lower corner. I've got 2 sons and my wife, who's currently expecting, so that's exciting. And one thing that we love to do is travel. So these are just some pictures from some of our recent trips over the last couple of years. Has just been a lot of fun, whether it's just the 2 of us or, all of us. So just a few things that I like to do besides genetic counseling. So to shift gears from me, when we think about genetic counselors themselves, we work in a variety of settings. So obviously clinical type settings, university medical centers, public hospitals, medical facilities, but we also work in other settings like diagnostic laboratories, non-for-profit advocacy groups, government organizations, newborn screening departments, and on it goes. Eli Lilly, which is one of the big drug companies, actually just hired a genetic counselor for one of their initiatives, which I think was, really exciting. And we can also work in a multitude of specialties. So my career began with prenatal and pediatrics. It shifted to cancer. Now I see primarily adult connective tissue disorder kinds of indications, and there are many others. So metabolism, neurology, pharmacogenomics, cardiovascular, if there's a specialty, there's probably a genetic counselor that practices in it. So these are just a few of the examples. And in terms of why of pursuing a career in genetic counseling, some of you may have been set on it for, the last 5 years. Some of you many times just discovered it as a career recently. And so some of the things that make it a really great place to be, it is an ever-changing world. And so you have to have some skills that you bring to the table to be really successful. And one of those is obviously a knowledge base in science and an interest in genetics, because you're going to use that. But I think a big important component as well is those good communication skills, really strong empathy, things along those lines as well that let you communicate at different levels, depending on whether you're meeting a patient at their location or their, where they are in their journey, another healthcare provider, a legislator, whoever it may be. We expect people to have the ability to really educate in a diverse setting of lots of different patient settings, and again, in that healthcare setting, but also beyond. It does have a strong salary, but it's, dependent on where you are in the country. So in the Midwest, you may have a starting salary somewhere in the range of 85 to 90,000. You start looking out on the coasts, and those starting salaries may be a little bit higher. So you would have to look at where you're looking to be employed, but it does have a strong starting salary. And it has a pretty high career satisfaction. The majority of genetic counselors, we survey ourselves through our professional status survey at a national level every year, and it is always ranked really highly with satisfaction. People are happy with what they're doing, and so that's a really exciting place to be, because we want people to really enjoy their jobs. And depending on where you are, it potentially offers a lot of flexibility. I work from home, for example. Some clinics have certain, 1 or 2 days a week that someone is able to work remotely or have an admin day. It's not a medical career that typically has on-call hours where you get called in on a Saturday evening, right? That's not a typical thing that you're going to see. And so it bodes itself well for not only having a great satisfaction feeling of fulfillment and contributing to others, but also a good balance of, work-life balance. And there most certainly is an increasing need for genetic services. So we're starting to branch out beyond the original, clinical care where genetic counselors worked. You saw me list a variety of others. So it's starting to get into all kinds of areas: research, clinical trials, public health. We've got bloggers and podcasters and all kinds of different areas. So it's just definitely a really evolving career. So genetic counseling itself, rated best job for 2018. Obviously, that's a while ago, and it still gets rated really high. So you'll see 2016 named one of the top 25. National Society of Genetic Counselors shows, we've had a tremendous growth over the last 10 years. We continue to see that growth most likely moving forward. And then you can see from, a year ago, that starting average was about 81. But just to point out, that's probably like in that Midwest area versus the coasts. Just to make sure you're familiar with the core requirements, I guess. So we do, with our accreditation, we prepare students to be able to sit for the American Board of Genetic Counseling, that's ABGC examination. That's required by most providers, employers, as well as most states. So if you're going to practice as a genetic counselor in the majority of states in the United States, it's going to require that you have a license, and in order to qualify for that license, you have to have a certification. So step one is graduating with your master's degree from an accredited program, and then step two is sitting for that board examination, and then potentially a license if it's required. So our program specifically, it is 63 credits. It is completed in 21 months, and it is entirely online from an academic perspective. So the bulk of the academic content is asynchronous, meaning it's going to have recorded videos, readings, content, etc. And you complete whatever work that you have, at your own time. We do typically have most classes that have weekly assignments, so it's not a complete free-for-all, but you can pick what days work best for you. Are you a morning person? Do you have a part-time job during the day, so you need to work in the evenings? No problem. But we do typically have weekly expectations to keep up with. We do have one in-person, one virtual kind of intensive weekends. So in August, everybody comes to our Longmeadow campus in Massachusetts, first years, second years, leadership, and we have a weekend where we get to know everyone. We do some activities together. We have some content. We do a resume writing workshop for second years and all kinds of different things, which is a wonderful way to get to know everyone. And then in January, we do something a little bit similar, but we keep it remote. So it's entirely by Zoom. It's one weekend, and we get to, do some professional development and workshops and different kinds of learning activities in that way. Like many genetic counseling programs, we have pretty extensive clinical, or you'll see it called fieldwork training. So that begins in your second semester, primarily with observation hours, simulations, role plays, things to get your, hands dirty, but not necessarily in the scary way that it might be sitting in front of real patients. So you get to test it out a little bit in the beginning, and then our formal rotations kick in the summer. And I'll talk a little bit more about those, I believe, in a slide or two. We do have a component on research. So there's a 3-course series for your capstone. It's intentionally a capstone versus a thesis so that it can be formatted in a variety of ways. We ideally love for things to be published in the end, though it's not a core requirement. But you can format it so that it's ready for publication versus a traditional thesis that you have to turn around and reformat everything afterwards. And we do have students complete their projects in pairs. Research is never done in a silo, and so it doesn't make sense from our perspective for you to do research alone. So you work with one of your peers, you develop and design your project together. You have typically a 3-person advisory committee that helps guide you throughout the process. And you're going to present to the cohort, our academic achievement day, so to the whole university in the spring before you graduate. And then all of our faculty are genetic counselors. We have 3 members of our leadership team that are full-time genetic counselors, and then we have a handful of adjunct genetic counselors who help come and teach specifically, certain courses that are really within their specialty. So that way you can get experience from a number of individuals and knowing that they are all professionals in the field. So the curriculum itself, one goal is balance. So clearly you will have courses and multiple courses in human genetics, but you will also have courses in psychosocial counseling where we can focus on, short-term counseling, grief support, decision-making, things like that. We also have dedicated courses, one specifically to ethics, and discussing ethics in not only genetic counseling, but also in our healthcare system, as well as a course dedicated to current social issues that are going on and how that may impact you as a provider, your patients, to be more well-rounded in how you approach your career. You have courses related to research methods before you dive too far into your research project. And then, as I mentioned, you have the supervised clinical fieldwork type training as well. Fieldwork specifically, everyone, no matter what training program you go to, we are all required to have clinical fieldwork, and all students are required to have experience in the 3, I apologize for the dog barking, 3 main specialties: prenatal, general genetics, which commonly is pediatrics, and cancer. That's a core that everyone has to do. But most programs, ours included, also have opportunities for other specialties as well. So depending on what your unique interests may be. So we have some students who may do a rotation in cardiology or industry or advocacy. And so there's some customization that can happen related to your fieldwork training that happens across from the summer between your first and second year, after the observations that you do in the beginning and the simulations and the role plays. Then you dive in that summer, and you have a block in the summer, the fall, and the spring before you graduate. And so the breakdown looks a bit like this. So I hinted already at this first one, where you'll be doing those contact hours through observations and simulations. And then that summer in between is when it really kicks off. So you'll be doing typically about 30 days where you're going to see anywhere from 40 to 60, sometimes 80, just depending on the site, patients in whatever specialty you are currently doing. So it might be prenatal, but for your peer, the next student, it might be cancer. Everybody does it in a slightly different order. And if you end up with a specialty that's non-cancer or non-patient related, like industry, we don't ask you to do extra. We just end up fitting it in within this time. And so people can customize what they're looking for. And then you kind of rinse and repeat. So you'll do that same 30 days in the fall and again in the spring. So typically for most students, they will be in fieldwork rotations for 10 weeks of the semester. Our semesters are 16 weeks, so there's a little play in when that ends up starting and stopping, which is great to be able to work around things like vacations or holidays or conferences, sick time, etc. And now I forgot what I was going to say about that. So, and it's, yes, 3 days a week for those 10 weeks. So that way you have time to do your research for your coursework and all of those kinds of things as well. Let's see. Okay. These are just a few examples of some of our fieldwork sites. This is not comprehensive by any means. There are only so many I could fit on a slide without it just being slammed full of words. But no, you'll notice that they're all over the place. We have sites in Maine, we have sites in California, we have sites in Texas, Hawaii, Kentucky, New Hampshire, you name it. Other than a few places that are really saturated with existing programs, we have sites in a wide spectrum of locations. And we build our locations from where our students have been in the past. So, for example, I just met with a student who's from Louisiana, and I don't have a lot of sites in Louisiana right now. And it's purely because I haven't had very many students from Louisiana. So we will then be likely looking to add sites if that person ends up coming into our program, because that's how we build our whole site list in the first place. So we add new sites every year, depending on where someone is located. And then some of these you'll notice are remote. So not every site is face-to-face, though the majority of what students do are face-to-face interactions with patients, but we do have remote options as well. And then in addition to our coursework, our field work, and our research, there are some supplementary things that students participate in. Academic Achievement Day is something that the whole university puts on, where students can share just a brief little snippet of their research with the entire university, which is always a great way to hear a little bit about just what's going on at the university. We have an interdisciplinary ponderings. It's like a journal club among all the other healthcare careers to be able to get a little taste for what's going on in some of the other healthcare careers. We have a journal club every month where students will present journal articles and lead a discussion among first and second year students together. We have a community outreach project where students will build the project in the summer, and then they have any time in the entire second year to do the project, whatever it may be. So it could be a presentation to a high school genetics class. It could be something that you do with a local support group. There's some different options in what that would look like. And then we do have students who participate in our National Society of Genetic Counselors. We always have a few second years who attend our national meeting. We're actually looking to add next year an interdisciplinary educational, now I'm trying to remember, professional educational activity where we're going to be doing some simulated cases, but it will be with not just genetic counseling students, but students that are in our PA program, our special education program, and you will work together to be able to, develop a care plan for a patient, and have to be able to work with people from different degrees and different areas of expertise, which is a great way of learning what some of those other specialties are. So in terms of why Bay Path's genetic counseling program, we definitely have flexible online coursework, works really well. We have a lot of applicants who are second career applicants who maybe need to have a part-time job, maybe they have children to take care of. And so it can work really well for those students. That doesn't mean someone right out of undergrad isn't a great fit as well. We do caution students about trying to work full-time. It is a full-time program, and so it is very difficult to work full-time. So that often is a big challenge. But during the first year, it's a little bit easier to maintain hours if someone were to need to. But by the time you get to your second year and you're doing your research and your field work, that we ask that students really be cognizant of their time, and most likely would have to cut back to part-time. There also may need to be potential for some travel. If you live in an area where there are no genetic services, I will not be able to place you in a clinical fieldwork site in your hometown. And so you may have to consider travel to go somewhere where there are sites that are open to having students. And so that's something we always want to make sure that everyone is aware of. And there's some places that are limitations, not because there aren't clinics there, but because the clinics that are there are saturated with students from other programs. So Colorado, Ohio, for example, those are particularly challenging ones. And so we can most certainly let you know like which ones are the most challenging areas. We often have students who will maybe just stay with family or friends for a few weeks. We can shorten some of those rotations to be a little bit shorter in your face-to-face, and we supplement with a full-blown simulated clinic with actors who do a phenomenal job. We sometimes could supplement it with a partial remote rotation, or whatever combinations that we need to do to try and meet your needs as best we can. But we want to be very transparent that I cannot guarantee rotations in certain areas where there aren't options there. And so we really are proud of some of the interdisciplinary things that we're starting to put forward, the research opportunities to work with your peers. We keep that clinical thread kind of all the way throughout. We start in that first year and we incorporate those skills throughout all of the rest of your training thereafter. And one thing we think is really important, especially in today's culture, is really putting some emphasis on ethics, professionalism, cultural humility, making sure that people are cognizant and aware of diversity, of the needs of others, and that's something that we think is really important. And then, of course, we give you an introduction to a variety of the professional roles, as well as the professional settings that different genetic counselors may work in. So everybody gets a little taste of some of the common field work, prenatal peds cancer, but we also make sure that everyone gets a little bit of a taste of the pharmacogenetics and of industry, and making sure that you know what some of those other specialties are as well. In terms of registering for the match, so if you haven't heard, all of the accredited genetic counseling programs are part of the National Matching Service. It's a third party that does the match for us. As being someone who is part of the process before the match, I promise you it is so much better than it used to be. But you have to register for the match. This is the website. There is a fee waiver if you have financial hardship, and so there's an explanation on how to qualify for that on both our website and the National Matching Service website. But you still will apply to each individual program that you're looking to apply to. So this is not something that is a universal application. You apply with them, you get a unique applicant code that you're going to put on your application materials, and then you will go to each school that you're interested in applying to individually and apply with whatever materials they are asking for, which we will go through ours here in just a moment, as well as your unique number. And this is our program code for once match time comes, and I'll explain a little bit more, but this would be how you would rank BayPath. So the process itself, the goal is to make it easier, and I promise you it does. It used to be a lot of, you would get a call from a program and they would say, hey, you've been waitlisted and we're waiting to hear from other candidates. And then we sit and there's this circular back and forth and we're waiting on you and you're waiting on us. And it was just a horrible week of chaos. All of that is gone. And so basically what happens is it's a third party that takes into consideration both you as the applicant and us as the program, our preferences. Typically the rank list is due in early April, which is after you would have done any interviews that you may have, and we'll talk about interviews in that process later. And you should rank in your true preference. So if you, let's say, interviewed at 3 programs, you loved program A, you really didn't feel like it was a good fit at program B, and you loved program C, but only if you qualified for their scholarship, for example. When you go to rank your preferences after interviews, you're going to rank, I would assume, program number 1 as your first, or I guess I was saying A, program A as your first choice, program C as your second choice, and maybe you wouldn't rank program B at all because you knew it wasn't a good fit. And maybe you never rank program C if it's without the scholarship either, because you knew you could only go there if you got a scholarship, for example. And so you should rank in your true preference because it is considered something that's binding. We do the same thing. We rank our applicants from top to bottom, and it will start at the top. And if you ranked program A and program A ranked you, you're going to match there. And so it fills a program's slots until they are at the max. So we will be taking in 22 students in the next round. And so basically they'll go as far down on our list as we need to go to fill that class of 22, for example. Programs are not allowed to tell you where you are in your rank list. So don't be surprised if they're not saying, hey, we really ranked you, we're going to put you number 10. No one's allowed to do that. So it's something that, you know, is a piece of the puzzle that is intended to be somewhat anonymous. And then match day itself is in late April. And it is a binding agreement. So you and we as the program, you will get an email that says, here's the program you matched to. And we will get an email that says, here's your cohort. And so it makes it a really clean process. Everybody gets notified all at once. And then the fun begins and you get to start your programs. If you do not match, please do not be disheartened. We get lots of applicants who apply a second time around and make excellent genetic counselors. Occasionally there are programs that don't fill their slots, and there will be a second match scramble that happens sometimes with a few open slots in that way. I encourage you, if that's the situation for you, reach out and ask for some feedback. How could you improve your application the next year? So this is unique to us. So our prerequisite courses, everything is on our website. This lists what those courses would be. Basically, if you were a biology major, for example, you probably meet all of these, no problem. We do look for making sure that you have upper level science classes. We want to make sure that you have at least one psychology class. We prefer that you have a grade of a B or higher, particularly in your prerequisite courses, but it is not something that excludes you from the whole process if you do not. We do want to see that those prereqs have an actual number of credits, they have an actual grade, so it's not just like a Coursera online certificate or something. Those won't qualify as prerequisites. And then we would like that all of the prerequisites be at least already done or in process, right? If you're still an active student and you are enrolled in one of these courses right before you graduate, that's okay. But we do want to see that you are actually enrolled or have already completed these prerequisites, with the exception of embryology. So embryology is one that many students don't come in with, and we actually offer it in the summer before the fall classes start. And so I would say most years we have 17, 18 students that are going to take embryology as a prerequisite with us before the actual rest of the program begins. And that's okay. We see that all the time. Is this what you wanted to talk about, Carrie, or should I?
Sorry, I couldn't, my mouse had frozen, but that is what I had you chatting about, but.
Okay, yep, happy to. So some students will ask about graduate credits and transferring, and so you can transfer up to 2 courses, but they will need approval. So you will want to reach out to program leadership and get approval for those transfer credits to count, because we need to see that it is truly an equivalent to one of the courses that you would be doing in our training program. So we need to know where you took the course. It must have a B or higher. We will ask to see at the minimum the syllabus if possible. We don't necessarily have to see assignments and other materials unless we can't tell if this is an equivalent level course. And so the goal is to make sure that this course meets the objectives of whichever equivalent you're trying to basically, not have to take as part of the program, but transfer in because you've actually already taken it. And so that's something that we do have students do on occasion. I don't know if I do have, maybe I have mouse control again. Okay. Other things besides just your, transcripts as a traditional aspect of your application, I do want to point out we do take a holistic approach. So we have a group that looks at just your transcripts. and a different group of people that will look at just your resume, for example. And the goal is to try and avoid bias so that if someone who was looking at the transcripts said, oh man, I saw they got a really great grade in this course, their writing must be strong, and then may skew their perception of your writing. Or they saw you didn't do well in a course and, same thing. So the goal is to try and eliminate bias as much as possible by having the same group look at every applicant's transcript, etc. We do encourage other activities. So we know that having a genetic counseling internship or being a genetic counseling assistant is not always possible, but if you are, great. Obviously put that on your application materials, particularly in your resume. But at the same time, if you have had the opportunity to shadow or even interview genetic counselors, we know that shadowing is not always a possibility. If you were applying to a job, I never would encourage you to write, I interviewed with these people before applying to a job. But this is graduate school, and we know that shadowing is difficult. And so it is okay to put on your application that you've interviewed genetic counselors about their jobs. I encourage you to do that, and I encourage you to interview more than one, particularly try to get people in different specialties. We love to see if you've had, laboratory experience or research experience, or you were a teaching assistant. Again, none of those are required, but those are all things that if you have those experiences, your resume is where you really want to make sure that we can see what you have done to prepare yourself. We do really like to see advocacy work in one way, shape, or form. And the traditional way to get that is through a crisis texting line or a domestic abuse shelter or something like that. That is the best way to gain advocacy experience for one of a couple reasons. One, you learn something about yourself. You learn how well you can handle those crisis situations. And while I don't have to deal with patients that are truly in crisis every single day, I do have to be comfortable navigating patients in a crisis situation. So we want to make sure that you can handle that. In addition, those experiences come along with a lot of really great training. And so we really like the training that they offer to prepare you for their service. And then that actually can help you in your genetic counseling training as well. So that's one reason those are ones that we really like. But there are other opportunities, right? You could work be a camp counselor at a camp for children with special needs, or really be active in other kinds of genetic events, advocacy groups, science honor societies, volunteering with various communities, rare disease, disability communities, etc. We just want to see that you really engage with those communities as well, ideally more than just, something that's a fundraiser, for example. Those are great ways to strengthen applications. We don't expect someone to have literally all of these. So you're going to find which things end up working best for you.
Okay.
Oh, is this where you'll take over? All right, I will let you take over.
Let's see. So at BayPath, we utilize Canvas, one of the most intuitive, user-friendly online learning platforms available today. To help new students get started, we offer a free orientation course called EXT99 that walks you through everything that you need to know. However, if you have used Canvas in your previous degree and you're really comfortable with it, we can waive that course, or you can, again, just retake it for kind of a refresher, but it is there and available to you so that you're not only beginning courses and learning a new platform on the same day. That's just too much. So it has built-in telecommunication and video capabilities, and virtual learning feels seamless and interactive. If you ever need help, our dedicated online support team is ready to assist you every step of the way too. And then if you need help with financial aid, Student Financial Services is here for you by phone, email, or in person, whatever works best for you. You could take advantage of FAFSA Fridays, where you get live one-on-one help with completing your financial aid application. And Student Financial Services offers Stafford loans with up to $20,500 per year available to help support your education. Let's see. And then to apply for the program, applicants must hold a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university, along with relevant coursework in the field. And when you're ready to apply, here's the required documentation that you'll need, where you'll start with the free online application at graduate.baypath.edu. Be sure to include your match number, which was explained earlier. You would submit official transcripts from all colleges and universities attended. The preferred method for that, I get a very common question that I get is, how would you like to receive them? And that's usually the best and cheapest method for folks is to send an electronic transcript. That's usually through Parchment or National Clearinghouse. It depends what your college or university uses, but that must come directly to us from them. We cannot accept your transcripts coming from you. So those can all of these materials that you see here can be sent to graduate@baypath.edu. If you have any questions, please feel free to either type them into the questions box or contact me directly. I'm happy to walk you through any of that. And then there's the prerequisite verification form, 2 letters of recommendation, which also have a required form. Include your current resume or CV, and prepare 2 short original essays, and the prompts can be found on our website. And finally, complete the fieldwork training expectations form, which is also on the BayPath website. The deadline to apply for the fall 2026 cycle is going to be December 15th, 2025. Just a tip from admissions, I do not recommend completing your application near that date. The reason being is because, well, especially when it comes to letters of recommendation. The letters of recommendation are really the only thing that are outside of your control. It is a really busy time for a lot of folks when it comes to being in and out of the office for holiday and things like that. So we do our very best to, especially when it comes closer to the deadline, to let you know what we need in order for your application to be complete. But please feel free to check in with Kim. She will be your admissions rep. I'm filling in for her tonight, but regardless, with Kim or graduate@baypath.edu, to please keep open communication to make sure that you are getting everything in on time. We would hate to have an application not be reviewed because you're missing a letter of recommendation because someone just isn't getting back to you. I've seen it happen too many times. So that's kind of my bit of advice when it comes to the application and the deadline. Let's see. And this here is Kim's and Megan's contact information. Again, you'll receive this recording with the follow-up tomorrow. I will be sending everything out to everyone's inbox, so please don't feel like you need to write all of this down right now. It will be coming to you shortly. And then that concludes our session. So I am going to go ahead and pause and let everyone kind of enter in their questions if you have any, and I will be able to read them out, and myself and Megan will answer them for you. So please feel free to go ahead.
Will I be able to see them or just you?
I can see them, Megan. I can read them out to you though.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Let's see. And I already have some coming in, Megan. So do pass-fail grades count for prerequisites if they were taken during the COVID-19 pandemic? Of course, if you pass the course.
Right, yes. Yes. Now, outside of sort of that pandemic window, we want to see a letter grade, but that isn't an option.
Great. And let's see, is there a limit on how long the resume or CV can be?
No.
Okay. And oh, this was another pass-fail COVID-19 question, so we already had answered that. Thank you so much for the presentation. Just to confirm, no personal statement is required.
So there is not a traditional personal statement. There are 2 questions that I'm going to flip back to, I think it's this page. So these 2 short original essays. So one is a little bit about your experience with online. One is about more of a social kind of cultural type question. So instead of a personal statement, we have that. They have a 3-page limit together, so you're not going to have to write, because a lot of times personal statements have a 2-page limit at a lot of places. So we do ask that it's no more than 3 pages combined for those 2 separate questions.
Okay, and will the capstone pairs be chosen by the students or the faculty?
Students. So you choose your project and you choose your pair. And so it's something that we will help you with. So if you come in and say like, I have no idea what I want to do, like we'll help you find an idea. We have you start sharing your ideas with each other to start in the first year, to start seeing who has similar ideas that they can then come together for their project.
And then another capstone question, are capstone projects always done in pairs or can they be done individually?
For now, we're keeping them all in pairs. If we had 2 students who, for whatever reason, were really adamant at doing something individual, we could probably consider it. But we don't want one student to be left out because someone else wants to do something alone. So for now, we're doing them all in pairs, but they are customizable. Sometimes we have students that do a survey that, they're surveying opinions on X, but other times we have students do other projects. We had one group last year who worked on building curriculum for special education teachers around Down syndrome. And so there's a lot of customization to it. So I would say we'd have to handle it a little bit as a one-off situation, but we're going to encourage pairs.
Okay. And I can answer this next one. When is the best time to finish applying? Like I said, the deadline is December 15th, but anytime before that is okay. I caution people to stay kind of away from that like being that very last minute, again because of the letters of recommendation. So when you know that you're going to apply and you submit the free online application form, you can just submit that form first and then send in other things, your essay, resume, your forms, as they become available. Do not feel like you have to wait to submit the online form until you have everything together. So when you do submit that online form, I would say the very first thing that I would do is send out those letter of recommendation forms to your recommenders. Again, just to give them ample time to do your recommendation. We do have that mandatory form, and a lot of recommenders, from the feedback that I've received, are thankful for it because they know exactly what we're looking for from them. And then let's see, Megan, the next one.
Give them information about you, right? Not everyone knows what genetic counseling is. So if you're asking someone to give you a letter of recommendation and they are your supervisor at your job or something, make sure you give them a little bit so they know what is genetic counseling, what things should I highlight. If now, obviously, if it's a genetic counselor or something, you may not need to do that. But I think giving your recommenders information can really help them out.
Great. And then what are some part-time jobs common amongst students who are successful in the program?
Oh, I have everything. I mean, I've had people who are teachers. I've had people who are literally university faculty members. We've had people who work in coffee shops. We've had people be medical coders, people who just work in a daycare, I mean, it could literally be anything. So I would say flexibility is helpful, particularly when it comes to your second year, because clinics are usually going to be a good old 9 to 5 kind of situation. And so when you're getting into your second year and you're needing to find the clinic days that you're going to do your rotations, you're probably not going to be able to hold a job Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, because you're going to need to spend at least 3 days a week in that clinic. So finding something that is part-time and gives you some flexibility to maybe do weekend or evening hours, whatever that may look like, is probably going to be best.
And a question regarding the rotations. Are there only 3 blocks for in-person rotations?
Yes. So there are 3 blocks when you are rotating, but I have students who maybe do 6 different sites because they do 5 weeks, 5 weeks, 5, they do 5 weeks in each of those blocks where they do 2 rotations in that 10-week block, or maybe they do a 6 and a 4, and other students will do a full 10. So there are 3 blocks that are 30 days each, but they get broken up uniquely on what you're looking for, what's available at your sites. Are you doing specialties, things like that.
Okay, and do you want us to include the essay prompt at the top of the essay, or can we just write it as is?
It's nice to have. We can usually figure it out. They're 2 very different questions, but it's nice to have. And it doesn't count towards, I mean, we don't have a specific word count anyway, but it doesn't take up too much.
Okay. For reapplicants, do they need to ask the same recommenders to resend the letter of recommendation, or last year's letter of recommendation will be taken into consideration, or do you need all new letters?
You have to tell us. So if you want us to use one from the prior year, you can, but it's not going to be something that's automatically pulled over. So you're going to need to reach out to that, graduate at baypath.edu and say, hey, I have this recommender. I'd like to use that same one. I would encourage you to maybe think about new ones just because, you may have done something new in that year that you want to be able to highlight. So I would encourage you at the bare minimum, probably don't use both of them as repeats. You could. I guess it just depends. Maybe asking feedback as well, so did you in your application when we were scoring it, did we say that, man, this really wasn't a very strong letter of recommendation? That can give you a good clue that maybe you should ask for different people. But it won't be automatic, so you'll have to let us know.
Is the embryology prerequisite able to be done via another genetic counseling program, or
Yes.
did we need to complete it in undergrad?
Nope.
For example, the Cincinnati program that offers an online course.
Yep, Cincinnati counts.
Okay. If you have connections to an institution, for example, I'm a coordinator at UMass Medical Cancer Center, would you be able to leverage those for fieldwork opportunities?
Yes, and sometimes no. So UMass is one we use all the time anyway, so that's one we use pretty regularly. What I usually tell students is we need to make, as in the program, we need to make the initial contacts because the genetic counselors practicing in the field don't want emails and phone calls from 150 students asking, can I come rotate? Can I come rotate? They get really overwhelmed by it. Sometimes they get a little annoyed. Sometimes there's a protocol in place where we have to actually go to a coordinator and you can't contact the genetic counselor, or we have to go to the program first, or an organization with the state, and you wouldn't know all of that. And so that's why we do that, because we know like what those chains are, what that protocol looks like, to make sure we're doing it the way they have asked. The exception is, and I always tell students, if you would have that person over to your house for dinner, for a casual, you are literally friends, family, someone you would invite to your home for dinner, you could probably give them a heads up of like, hey, I'm really interested in rotating with you. Do you think this is something that would work out? I still have to be the one to arrange the rotation, but I think you most certainly could at least give someone that you have that level of relationship with kind of a heads up.
How successful are your students at getting jobs after graduation, especially given the genetic counseling job market at the moment?
Oh, great question. I should have looked at that number before hopping on. I believe we ended up with 80+% from last year's cohort. We actually are just now surveying the group that just graduated this past May, so I don't have their data yet. Had positions within, I think, that 3-month window or so. And then now I believe the vast majority of them have positions in place. I haven't really heard of anyone who's still looking, though it's possible. And then same thing, even the new graduates who graduated just this past May, you know, we're regularly hearing of jobs. You know, it seems like most of them have something. I don't have official data on that yet because we are collecting it at the moment.
Okay, if a prospective student already has a master's degree in pharmacogenomics, as well as a bachelor's in a clinical field, can some of the prerequisite courses be substituted, or do we have to stick to the list?
Reach out, because sometimes things are similar, right? They just have a different name. And so I would reach out to that on a one-on-one basis, and we can look at what those courses are to see, do we feel like the content was similar enough to then kind of meet the need of that prerequisite.
Let's see, do your students feel well prepared for boards? Is there additional prep built into the coursework?
Great question. Yes, I believe they do. Our students that just graduated in May, we had 95% of them, 94 point something percent of them passed on the first time. So we were really happy about that. We have some review sessions built in kind of throughout the program. Occasionally, we intentionally have some of the exams that you would take in courses designed in a board style, kind of to get some practice with those kinds of questions. And then this past summer, we held eight different review sessions on various topics to help prepare them leading up to the boards for August. And we also, so far for the last couple of years, and fingers crossed, we hope to this upcoming year as well, have some funds to at least partially support one of the review courses, so that we can help financially support you in taking one of those review courses as well, because I think they're really valuable too. So we do a variety of different things throughout to try and help prepare students for boards.
Great. And how many applicants were there last year? And of those applicants, how many received an interview?
Great question. We usually get anywhere from 110 to 130 applications. I think last year we were right at like 118 or so. And then we typically interview 60 and then go from there.
Great. And the last question I am seeing here is fieldwork in Minnesota difficult to locate?
A little bit, because of the programs that are in Minnesota. That doesn't mean it's impossible. We'll see if of course my screen froze over here, not what you're doing. And you can reach out to me directly. I'm happy to answer that question. If you give me a quick second, I can at least look and see what I know for Minnesota, because I believe we've placed someone up there recently. But I just need to pull it up and double check. So it sounds like that's the last question though, right? Or are there any others while I do that?
I actually did see one more come through. How much contact / collaboration do students have with each other aside from their capstone partner?
Oh, great question. So first of all, I forgot, one of the Minnesota sites that we use is actually one of our remote sites. So it's Gillette Children's. We have students that rotate there pretty regularly. So I don't have a lot of Minnesota, which means I haven't had a lot of students in Minnesota. So we would have to be able to explore that and potentially add some new ones. In terms of interactions with students, we've actually been really pleasantly surprised. That was a worry as an online program. Would we have a cohesive cohort? And we really do. They already know each other before they even show up to our on-site weekend, because they've already hopped on whatever platform they're choosing to use. I think right now they're using Discord, where they've set up their own thing and they're chatting and talking and doing all the things. And what's really cool is that we really do see that they stay pretty well connected even after graduation, because that's how they built their relationship to start with, versus building a face-to-face relationship and everybody scattering to their jobs. It's been really neat to see them stay, obviously not literally everyone, but they'll send us pictures of a group of them that went on vacation together, and so and so was in this person's wedding, and so they really do still build really strong relationships. We have some very intentional things. There are things that we do together as an entire program. So Journal Club is one that's everyone together. We have a mentorship where we pair a first and a second year, and we prompt them every month with things to talk about. We have some projects, like, for example, second year students are in their psychosocial 2 course, and first year students are in their psychosocial 1 course, and we have some projects that they do together. For our role plays, we have second years that help supervise first year students, group activities and projects, and those kinds of things throughout as well. So they most certainly get to interact in more than just discussion posts.
Oh, thank you. And then truly the last question, I saw another one pop through, and I love these sessions because everyone asks so many good questions. But how much volunteering or shadowing hours should we have at, say, a crisis center to be competitive?
There's not a magic number. I do, some programs will have a set number. Well, they will say, we want to see you've done at least 40 hours. So there isn't something that's a magic number. Everything is kind of on a scale. So clearly, if you went and just did 1 day, you're not going to score as well in the advocacy experience as someone who's been volunteering in a crisis center for a whole year. But that's one little factor, right? Maybe you have really strong teaching experience, or you are a GCA, or who knows. So keeping in mind that it is as holistic as possible, but there isn't anything, magical. I would say I have seen that 40 hours by some programs. So if I were to pick a number, that would probably be my number, but not because it's ours, because I've seen that other programs have that as kind of a minimum to shoot for. So potentially somewhere in that range.
Great.
We like when it's a little bit longer, not that you just did it to check a box, right? So if it's obvious you just did it to check the box, like, we want to see you're actually, dedicated to helping others. So.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for all of your excellent questions, and Megan for helping me to present this evening. Like I said, this recording will be going out to you tomorrow morning. And if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Megan. We are always happy to help. But I hope everyone has an excellent evening, and thanks again.
Great, thank you so much, everyone.